The DFS Studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome back. It's Friday, November 22nd here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. It's Chilly Willy Ding Dong outside Betz.
Okay. It is cold though, man. I was just out there. It was like 2 days ago. It was like 60. Here I am in Pennsylvania. And I was out there with the dog this morning, taking him on a nice little walk, just trying to, clear the mind, find the answers to the slate. And it's freaking freezing, man. Like winds were whipping, little rain, just cold. So yeah, winter is here. Winter is coming. And, I don't mind winter. Like I kind of like having all four seasons where I live. But fall to me is the best time of the year. So the fact that fall is kind of slowly coming to an end makes me quite sad.
Preach. I like going against you when I can, but this take is spot on because it is getting a little bit cold. Like this morning, I think it was in the 30s. And some people out there listening, you're going to one up and you're going to say, where I'm from, it's negative all the time. It's like, congrats. It was cold for here in Georgia. Like it was in the 30s, played some pickleball this morning, slowly warmed up. But what I'm really looking for, I play outside. In Arizona, I played inside all the time and I got soft. Now I'm just a grizzled old man playing pickleball.
So how long does pickleball season last? Until there's snow? I mean, it doesn't really snow that much down there, but...
Yeah, we just kind of keep playing until we can't. So...
Respect the grind.
Yeah. I mean, it's me and some elite competitors, so don't want to talk it up too much. I know that sometimes Betz always, when I tell him I'm playing pickleball, he always says like, oh, have fun playing Gladys out there.
I got to be careful with what I say about pickleball. But I'll just leave it at that.
We played some pickleball a little bit in Arizona, but it was, with Andy, Mike, and Jason, I played a ton. But yeah, it's like what I'm looking forward to now, call me crazy, is like I'm going to sit at home, I'm going to get warm, I'm going to put a fire on tonight. I mean, this is adulting.
Sipping some tea with your dad's slippers on. I mean, that really is a nice time of the year, isn't it? You're sitting back, especially when football's on. And like, dude, over the holiday season, if you're a college football fan plus NFL, we're going to have NFL and college football on our TV for like 17 days straight or something like that over the holidays and through the new year. So it'll be a nice time to, like you said, just relax and catch some football. So yeah, man, we have a lot of football ahead of us, especially over the next 2 weeks, because next week we have our Thanksgiving show.
Yeah, it's probably a good time to give a little announcement. Next week, we will still be having the same podcast. So it'll come out on Tuesday, it'll come out on Friday. However, they will be formatted a little differently. The Tuesday podcast will be entirely devoted to the Thanksgiving Day slate. So we will break down those games, talk about how that gets a little different. And then I just think it is a holiday for those who celebrate and love DFS. Like that's what it is. And so we'll do that just for Tuesday. And then the Friday episode will be wholly devoted to the main slate, which is really hard because Thanksgiving, you have all of your mind devoted to just that one day. And the way that, this is the only play that, we're talking about Khalif Raymond or Dawson Knox or whoever we've talked about in the past is like the most important person on the slate. And then we have to press refresh and look at the next week's slate. So, stay with us. Make sure you get everything in the DFS Pass, dfspass.com. We will also update our content schedule if you're one of those people. And then also reach out in Discord. There's some nice, fun people. And we even threw out some basketball props the other day. They might have hit.
Kyle throws out a prop, and I messaged him separately. I'm like, dude, what's the idea here? He's like, I don't know. It's hitting 4 straight. I was like, good enough for me. And we played it, and it hit. So yeah, Kyle is the thought leader in NBA props. Make sure you hop in Discord. Again, the bosses, like, they don't even know that we do this. This is just a little premium perk for you if you're in Discord with us. Sweat some props. Every now and then we give out some NHL props. Obviously, our NFL props are hot and heavy right now, but yeah, we keep going all year.
Yeah, and it is fun to start getting into NBA because it's a different game of how you're figuring out how props work. But I love to see people who just go, oh, bets, put it out there, I'm betting it. And we're like, hey, dude, this is NBA. We're just kind of doing this for fun. But hopefully you have found the DFS Pass to be profitable. It's been helpful. DFSpass.com if you want to be a part of that.
Straight cash, homie.
All right, you're listening to this on Friday, and I have gone through a lot of soul searching from when we first talked on Tuesday, because I was thinking to myself, Betz was trying to talk to me about certain quarterbacks, like maybe we should play this guy, and I was like, I just can't do that. I'm a changed man, and I don't know what it is. Is it projections? Is it spreadsheets? Is it looking at my lineup and going, wow, you can do a lot of fun stuff this week in cash. So I am just saying from the very beginning, my mind is open. I am considering all the possibilities. And we're talking about if you wanted to play Tommy DeVito this week at 4K on DraftKings. He's 6K on FanDuel, not as good, but 4K on DraftKings. It can work this week. So talk to the people if they want to get nuts with Tommy.
Oh man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little gun shy after the cheap quarterbacks that I've played. I haven't played them a ton this year, but I think maybe like 2 slates. And
the
it's kind of
it's
like worked once, and it's kind of like came back to bite you in the butt on one of them. So acknowledge the fact that this can go south. That said, he is 4K taking on the Bucs. The Bucs are 31st in EPA per dropback over the last 6 weeks, giving up a ton of fantasy points to quarterbacks. Now, my only hesitation here with Tommy is that there is some potential wind in this forecast, and I think there's a good chance we see a ton of rushing from Tyrone Tracy, from Brian Daboll. The last time we saw him last year, Tommy DeVito, attempted, looking at his game logs here, 27 or fewer passes in every start except for one. So I don't think you should ever expect him to be like forced into being a gunslinger. That's not what they want him to be. They want him to control the game, run a little bit with his legs, which he can do, and kind of operate the offense. So I kind of see both sides of the argument. I haven't decided where I land yet in that game, but at 4K, you're asking yourself, can he give you 12 points? And last year in his starts, and I only included the ones that he started and finished the game, which there was one that he did not. But in those games that he started and finished, he averaged 14.9 fantasy points. So 12 to 15-ish is on the table, and if he gives you that in cash, you'll be happy. Outside of like injury, I don't think there's a situation where they bench him this week, do you?
No, did you see today that Daniel Jones was running the scout team defense? He was playing safety out there.
Saw that. Sad times, man.
Poor guy.
Yeah, everybody knew, like the writing was on the wall that, his time in New York is over. We talked about that in the offseason. Like when you start bringing in prospects and you start thinking about trading up in the top 5, like you already made your decision. But yeah, for the human being, man, it's tough. It's really tough. So I feel for him. It's a tough situation in New York. But you don't think they're going to bring in Drew Lock at any point, do you? If it goes south for Tommy?
They could bring in Lock. That's totally possible. I think think about this. First start here after the bye. So they put in a ton of time and energy of how they think that he can, help their team or they could win. I just think they're not going to just remove it really quickly just because of the media and all those things. They're going to stay with him. And it is a good matchup, right? Like Tampa Bay is 31st in EPA per drop back since week 6. So I'm fine playing him, but just play around with the numbers. If you get 12 points with DeVito, put that in your projections and ask yourself, like, okay, the salary that I got from DeVito, and let's say you wanted to get up in the 5K range, because really this week, nobody's paying up for quarterback because there aren't any expensive quarterbacks. Jane Daniels is the most expensive at 7K, and you and I have kind of moved off him just because they've steamrolled, and we think that Brian Robinson is going to be a very popular play that people look at this week in cash. So at quarterback, if you're not going Tommy Cutlets, in the 5K range, it's Geno, Anthony Richardson at 5.6. Drake May, I think, is fine. I think he'll get squeezed out. And then if you wanted to pay up a little bit more, I kind of like Bo Nix on the road at 6.3. But I think you're going to see a lot of Geno, DeVito, and Richardson.
Geno, DeVito. I thought you were going to hit us with another rhyming one.
I tried. I thought about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those are kind of my top ones as well. We've been talking about this all year with Geno. Like the pass volume should be there. It has been there. Just the touchdowns have lagged behind, and that's kind of what we're waiting for. I feel like at some point that's going to swing back in his direction. Positive regression, it should happen. This is the second highest total on the slate between Arizona and Seattle, so you could see a potential back and forth affair. We'll talk about that game from a game stack standpoint, but both teams give up and create big plays. So I do think there's a chance that game could shoot out. So I like Geno. Obviously, you get Metcalf. JSN is playing very, very well. Lockett's still reliable. And then you get Kem Walker out of the backfield. So the weaponry is there for Geno in this spot at 5.7. I think Richardson is super interesting because my initial take is like, oh, we just saw him play a great game. Let's run him out there. And he had his highest rush attempt, mark of the year, 10 carries, 2 inside the 10-yard line. So you get those goal line opportunities. But, I don't want to overreact, right? Like the Jets, I think, are kind of mailing it in at this time of the year, if we're being honest. The Lions have everything to play for, and this is a tough defense. Even though they lost Anzalone and Hutchinson, they're number 1 in EPA per play defensively since week 6. So I don't think we should copy and paste last week. That said, it's the best game environment on the slate. It's in a dome. I feel confident the Lions are going to put up points, so he should be pushed here. I just think there's a wide range of outcomes on Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, we can talk about Richardson when we get to that game and just kind of like, here's where it could go wrong. Here's why matchup-wise I think it's a nightmare for him. But in cash at 5.6, I get it. So make sure you check our best plays. And I'll also add, if you're playing on FanDuel, Jordan Love is kind of forgotten. Like somebody didn't do their job with Packers players across the board. Josh Jacobs is good value, but he's QB 13 on FanDuel and QB 3 on DK. So at 7.3, that's a really good tag on FanDuel if you want to play Jordan Love. At running back, we are back to the same conversation we had last week, where you're going to see a lot of 3 running back builds. And I don't really think you need to move off that this week because you have value at quarterback. There's a punt tight end that I think will be popular. So CMC at 8.5, 9.5 on FanDuel is going to project super well. I feel like there's people out there saying, hey, I played this guy the last couple weeks and he hasn't gotten there, so I don't really want to spend up. But I feel like I just don't care. I'm going to be playing CMC.
Yeah, it has been a little bit frustrating. And, obviously in hindsight, it's easier to talk about this than in the moment. But maybe we should have just acknowledged, like, it's probably going to take him a few weeks. Obviously, the guy hasn't played football this year to get up to speed. And you kind of have seen that a little bit. The other thing is that, Kittle is a monster in the run game. He was out last week. So I think you get Kittle back this week, help the run game. You can run on the Packers. And I've talked about this, a little bit already with Kyle Shanahan, but like when the chips are down, it's McCaffrey. He's going to play 90% of the snaps. He's played 88% and 94% the last 2 weeks, coming off of a 3-month injury. Like Kyle Shanahan is a sicko, and they have to win to make the playoffs. So I feel super confident Christian McCaffrey is going to be in there for every high value touch, every high leverage situation. He's going to get fed in this spot, especially if Purdy is a little banged up with that shoulder injury.
You can afford CMC and another expensive running back like Devon Achane this week at 7.5 if you want to. If you're paying down at quarterback, if you're paying the 5K range or down at 4K with Tommy Cutlets, you can afford those two. We also like James Conner on both websites, 6.5 on DK, 7.7 on FanDuel. He's a solid play. I wanted to get your thoughts on Kareem Hunt because it is a wait and see. We got to figure out with Pacheco if he plays. But if he doesn't, then Kareem Hunt at 5.7 as a 11-point favorite last time I saw it at Carolina, who's the worst rush defense in the league. Like that seems like a lock if Pacheco's out.
Yeah, and one of these things that you're lucky, I guess, if you're waiting to play Hunt here, that DraftKings left him where he is, assuming Pacheco is out. And I do think the most likely outcome is that Pacheco sits this week. Just, again, I've kind of talked about this on the injury blitz and stuff like that, but it takes a few weeks to come back from this once you get on the field from this injury. And then also, the Chiefs are 9-1, right? Like, they can probably beat the Panthers without Isaiah Pacheco. So, 11-point favorite, huge positive game script is likely here with Kareem Hunt. They trust him. He's never going to give you those long explosive plays, but he always turns out, 5-6 yards per touch. He's going to get the goal line touches. It makes a ton of sense at 5,700 on DraftKings. And again, only if Pacheco is out, but yeah, he looked rock solid.
Yeah, and that game's in the 1 o'clock window on East Coast, so you get to make the decision early. A lot of times Chiefs games are in the late window, but you'll figure that out early. And then I need to mention Brian Robinson. And I talked about him on Tuesday. We kind of slowly brought him up. Jason actually had him as the start of the week this week for redraft stuff, but at 5.6 as a double-digit favorite at home. I feel like the floor is really high, like in terms of scoring. He's had a couple 100-yard games. So I really like Brian Robinson because I'm not going to be playing Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, he's solid. I think this is super easy. Like if
You've
Pacheco...
always been the B-Rob guy.
Me or you?
You.
Oh, have I? I just think he's been undervalued. Like in best ball, he was going in like the 10th round. Which, I mean, nobody saw the Commanders being this good, but still, shout out to the under 6.5 win total out there. But Brian Robinson, he is good. He is effective. My only slight pause is that it's just like Derrick Henry, right? Like sometimes he's going to get game scripted out. Now, I would be shocked if he got game scripted out here. It's the Dallas Cowboys with Cooper Rush, and they are double-digit underdogs. You can just run all over the Cowboys. I mean, everybody does it. So I think that's very likely. The other thing is that when they get in close, Cliff loves to hand it off. When they get inside the 10, it's B-Rob. Sometimes it's Eckler, depending on the situation, but it's usually all, B-Rob in there. So yeah, touchdown equity is high here at 5,600. So he makes a ton of sense. I think I slightly prefer Hunt, but I wouldn't fault anybody for going Brian Robinson.
Yeah. So you're probably going to play, or at least we would encourage you to probably play 3 running backs from this group. And we'll have this specific order in our best plays. Brian Robinson on FanDuel is 7,900, where he probably won't even show up as a top 5 play. So it's always site dependent when we talk about certain plays. So think about that. At wide receiver, we're going to be drawn from the same 5K range we've been talking for a while. It's the dudes, and I'm going to say it here. I'm going to say it maybe 5 more times this episode. I love Juwan Jennings.
Oh, Kyle, you don't say. I'm shocked. Please tell me why.
Juwan Jennings is an animal, and I don't think we realize how good he's been. Let me give you some numbers here, Betz. He's been targeted on 27% of his routes. He has a 2.84 yards per route run, and he's seen 28% of the team's first targets. The only other wide receivers to hit those marks this year, some guy named Nico Collins, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson. That's it. And yet, what are they doing on these websites? I mean, like, whoever's in charge of this is still farting around, not doing anything because he's $5,600. I said it last week. I said this guy should be in the 7,000 range based on his role. After what he did this past week, where he balled out, he barely went up in price. And maybe you look at the matchup, but like Juwan Jennings at 5,600 is locked in my cash lineup, and you cannot change my mind.
Yeah, he looks incredibly strong this week. I think part of it is just the priors that everybody has, right? Like everyone's like, it's Juwan Jennings. And like
haters.
Everybody, I mean the haters. Everybody thinks that that's kind of not the normal. And I will say, like, it feels like at some point this Debo pendulum might swing back, but you cannot argue with the usage. I mean, it is elite among all wide receivers that have run, or 90 wide receivers that qualified for these metrics. He is 5th in yards per route run, PFF grade, and ESPN's open score. The dude is just good. He's being used as the go-to guy with his first read target share. He's lapping Deebo Samuel in first read targets. So until I see otherwise in cash, I'm going to keep playing it when the price tag is too cheap.
Yeah, Juwan, Cortland Sutton at 5.8, Jacoby Myers, we brought him up last week at 5.1. You're going to see a lot of people drawing from this 5K range because you're paying up at running back. And I love it this week. But the expensive wide receiver that I'm willing to pay up for this week, like I don't know if I can get all the way up to Amon-Ra. I don't know if I can get up to Jefferson. But right below that is our boy Nico Collins at 7.6. I know we didn't see the full allotment of snaps. I know we did get a touchdown called back last week. I think that Nico's going to be 8K next week. And so I'm in because, the price is only going up.
For sure. Yeah, he looks awesome this week. Tennessee still without L'Jarius Sneed. We've talked about this at length. CJ Stroud at home against bad defenses. Yes and yes. And when you get Nico back, I do think we see that full allotment of snaps like you talked about. I think he played, it was 30 of 61 on Monday night, so he wasn't really out there for every snap, and some of it was garbage time, of course.
Yeah, they were killing it.
They didn't need to push him. But, I mean, at home, I think this is a great spot for Nico. So, yes, and he kind of feels a lot like Puka of last week, where it was like, in cash, like you could spend off on Puka if you wanted to. He's a great play. But the builds, just because of how it worked out, everybody went into that 5K range, and nobody played Puka, despite him being awesome. And I played him in a tournament. It was beautiful. He came in at, I think, like 8%. So Collins, to me, feels like another guy that could come in, I don't know, 10-ish% in GPPs. I think you play him in cash. But in tournaments, I love Nico this week.
Yeah, speaking of Puka, he's a great play on FanDuel if you want to spend up there. That's in the Sunday night game, which we will preview. By the way, our FanDuel people are rejoicing right now in their, trying to think of what car they're driving.
Oh, what kind of car FanDuel people drive?
Yeah, dude. They are totally driving like a Isuzu Rodeo, picking a really old car.
Definitely, Kyle, definitely.
Or van life. Do you guys have a van? I can't remember.
No, we do not have a van. We have the wonderful, always dependable Honda Pilot.
Okay, I get
Not
it. Now we're right. We're a Honda Odyssey family. So,
you guys really went for it. And I have one more kid than you.
Yeah, we went for it. Ours is like a 2017.
No big
deal. Got some great mileage. You know, it's got the DVD player, so the kids are real happy.
When I went to look at this Pilot, the salesman was like, he's like, you got young kids? I was like, yep, that's why we're looking for the third row. Did the whole spiel. He's like, watch this. He flips down the Blu-ray player and he's like, look at that. He's like, can you imagine taking your kids on vacation, pop in their favorite movie, silence in the back seat for 2 or 3 hours while you and your wife can talk in the front. It's like, this is a great family car. I was like, you know what? Where do I sign? It sold me. But what's hilarious is nobody makes Blu-rays anymore. So I got.
Oh, he definitely got you. You can definitely replace it and get a VHS player if you need to, a little custom. Man, if you sell cars, props to you because it seems like a very tough business. But I would probably be the worst person in the world to talk to about negotiating for a car because I would just be a butthole. Just like, nope, don't believe you, don't care. Nope, I'm going to make my own decision. Leave me alone. Okay, so we talked about Puka. Juwan Jennings on both sites is good. And then Pity City on FanDuel is just kind of left alone. He's the same price as Alec Pierce, his teammate, for some reason. And Pity City's actually been not bad, 27% target share with Anthony Richardson this year. So he's a play on FanDuel. And then if you need a punt this week, booty. That's all I'm going to say. Kayshon Boutte is still cheap, still on the field all the time. If you want to go that route, you can. At tight end this week, we like Hunter Henry the most. If I had all the money, I would play Hunter Henry at 4K. But if you wanted to punt, Luke Schoonmaker is the dude. Former second-round pick, by the way, Luke Schoonmaker. People forget. The government wants you to forget. But he's fine. He saw 10 targets last week. Those are probably our two plays. Like I fiddled around with some lineups that had Bowers in it. And I just found myself like short in other areas. So I think this is going to be the range that most people go.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Hunter Henry is my favorite. We're not going to talk about that game like in full detail, but we'll give kind of some thoughts on how you could stack it if you want to. I mentioned on the Tuesday show that's like my favorite kind of sneaky game here with Miami and New England. And with Drake May, the offense has some juice in the pass game, right? So Hunter Henry has seen a 21% target share from Drake May. Nice spy here against the Dolphins. And then the Schoon Man, what did he see? 10 targets in that game on Monday night? And Washington is bottom 10 since week 6 in schedule adjusted points to tight ends. So either one, I think they're both in play.
Little Schoon Man stat for you, buddy. What if I told you that he was targeted on 34% of his routes on Monday night, led the team, and today, we're recording this on Thursday, CeeDee Lamb was not spotted at practice on Thursday with a back and foot issue.
Ooh, wasn't he? He was limited, I think, on Wednesday. So I'll talk more about that on the injury blitz.
I need CD in my life for many, many, many reasons, but most specifically, my most important home league team. At defense this week, a lot of teams in the 3K range. Tampa Bay, Denver, Miami. I think you can get there this week. Like a lot of times I'm just moving past this and saying like just punt it off a bridge. Like if you want to play the Bears at 2.5, do it. But I think I'm going to end up in a lot of this 3K range of playing teams that are against quarterbacks that take tons of sacks, right? Like so Tommy DeVito, like if you're not playing him, like play the Buccaneers at 3.3 because DeVito's pressure to sack ratio is through the roof. And then Miami, I think, is a really solid play at home against Drake May.
Yep, I agree. Those are my top two. If you did need to save the money, and I don't think necessarily on this slate you have to punt all the way down at defense, but you can. I think the Bears are in play. They are 2,500 taking on Sam Darnold. Darnold's been fine. Most of the year he's had some ups and downs, but he will make mistakes every now and then. He'll take sacks, throw some picks. So the Bears make sense. I'll also throw out too, in that same 3K range, the Broncos at 3,200 make a lot of sense taking on, I almost said Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and the Raiders.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. I realized, and I needed to mention it here to the people because they're going to be rooting for me. I know people that listen to this podcast, they root for us. But on Friday, I will be submitting a lineup for the fantasy face-off between Jason, Andy, and myself because Mike is out of town.
No pressure.
I know, no pressure. And we've done it before where if I lose, then all the deucers have to wear the stupid outfit. Of course, my teams have never lost when we've done that. But it just really matters that what we do for our jobs shows out really well for our bosses who sometimes with DFS, they get a little crazy.
Yep.
The lineup building, we would just say that sometimes they get a little, now for tournaments, sure, but for cash, they get a little weird. So I will make sure to submit that lineup and kind of show you guys. You'll hear it on Friday's podcast. I'm going to tell you right now, it'll probably be pretty close to what I actually play.
Maybe so if you want to scoop Kyle's head-to-heads, you'll know exactly the team he plays.
Yes. Now, the worst part about that segment, it's Friday on the main footballers show, is we have to submit our lineups on Friday, and then you cannot pivot at all.
Yeah, there's some strategy there. Obviously, that's not how you play cash, so it's not ideal.
No, I know. So anyway, you and I can kind of talk about that off, and then you guys can hear it on Friday's show. So Fantasy Face-Off should be fun this week.
Stack Attack.
All right, we're going to talk about the games that we want to stack up this week. We've got a pretty good slate of games that I feel really excited to talk about. The first one is the Detroit Lions at the Indianapolis Colts. The Lions are 7.5-point road favorites. The over/under is 50.5. The Lions have the highest team implied total for the second week in a row. 5 of their last 7 games have hit the over, and they are an absolute machine. So where do you want to start talking in this game? Because I feel like there's a lot of different routes we could go.
Yeah, let's start on the Lions side of the ball. Because like you said, it's such a good spot. I mean, they play literally every week in a dome this year, basically, so it's been great. But again, they're in a dome, taking on a Colts defense that you can definitely pick apart either in the run game or in the pass game. And I know you talked about this in pace of play in the DFS pass, but Jared Goff against cover 3, which is what this Gus Bradley defense is, has been dominant. And I didn't realize how good it was until I read your article, and I was like, oh wow. So I'm super interested in a lot of these pieces, whether it's Goff stacks for tournaments or, especially as leverage off of Anthony Richardson, or playing the running backs, because we know either one can get there. We know that both of them see goal line touches. Both of them get usage in the pass game. And the field is always like, I don't know which one to pick, so I'll never play them in cash. And therefore, the roster percentage comes down in tournaments. So they're never like in the quote-unquote cash play as long as both guys are healthy. And I just love taking shots on both of them each week because they have such a high ceiling. So, I mean, I want a lot of access to Lions this week, obviously. And I think what you're hoping for in this game, potentially for Detroit, is, with Richardson in his starts this year, the opposing team has seen elevated play volume almost every single time, whether it's because they play fast or just Richardson will commit turnovers. And either way, like there's just so many paths here for an efficient offense to also see elevated play volume. Sounds like a perfect spot for the Lions.
That's a really good point of just looking at what one side and the volatility of Anthony Richardson of like, okay, they stay in it like last week. It was a back and forth affair. They won at the very end. But when he does, it just means that you get a ton more plays for the others. So the Lions are interesting because you would think I need a back and forth affair for me to stack up this game. Last week was a perfect example of, the Jaguars didn't do anything. And if you played Jaguars, you were dead. All you needed was a bunch of Lions, like 4 or 5 Lions, and you were totally fine. Gibbs might be my favorite piece in this game. He's 7,300 on DK. I almost made him my slate breaker because I feel like he's set up in a spot where the roster percentage isn't going to be very high. And you mentioned earlier, people are always like, I just don't really know where to go. I do want to point out, though, the receiving work has kind of been split this year. Like, David Montgomery only has 2 fewer receptions. Gibbs has been much more efficient with them. But if you wanted to play Goff, then Gibbs, and then one other piece, like Jamo, or you wanted to play Amon-Ra, who leads the NFL in receptions versus cover 3, I'm totally fine with that. And then you find a pass catcher on the other side to bring it back. I like that option. I also see a route in this game where the Colts fall flat on their face. You play Montgomery, you play the Detroit defense, and you get out of this game. So I like the Lions. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and
imagine that.
It feels like a cop-out answer to be like, just play Lions this week, because everybody wants to know, like, who is it, right? And it's very tough, especially when you add Laporta back into the mix here. Like, Jameson Williams has seen a nice bump in his usage when Laporta's been out. Laporta's seen a nice bump in usage when Jameson Williams has been out. Both guys are there, so it does kind of create this like uncertain situation. But again, looking at roster percentages, like right now I'm seeing every single Lion, no matter what position they are, under 14%. So just like last week, it is one of those kind of paralysis by analysis situations where it's like, I don't know who it is. I'll just not play it. And those are the spots we want to lean into in tournaments. So I like golf stacks. I like playing either running back as a one-off in this game. Like you said, correlating it with the defense, I think is also interesting. There's just a lot of ways that this Lions team can roll. As we saw last week, you do not have to force a bring back if you don't want to on Indy. I just think, just like last week, Lions onslaughts are very much in play.
Yeah, the most popular plays in this game is probably going to be Amon-Ra.
Yep.
And then maybe Richardson on the other side?
Richardson for sure. I mean, he's the quote-unquote cash quarterback, so he will be popular. But yes, I think it will be Amon-Ra and A-Rich.
Okay. Yeah, so with the Colts side, my issue is that the Lions play the highest rate of man coverage in the NFL. And football take here, hand in the dirt. My hands are so dirty right now from just giving this football take. When you play man coverage, it's just a tighter window to throw in. It doesn't, you can either have big separation from certain guys like Josh Downs or whatever, but a lot of times you have a lot more contested catches. With Anthony Richardson, he's not exactly a precision passer. And I don't know if I'm going on a limb there. I feel like he's kind of proved true. And this year against man coverage, he's dead last in adjusted completion percentage. And then against the blitz, and the Lions have increased their blitz since Aiden Hutchinson went out for the year, and they've actually increased their pressure rate. So the fact that he's going to see a ton of man, he's going to get blitzed a ton, you're just asking for a lot of turnovers here. So I think my favorite piece is just going to Downs again, even though he's kind of expensive. Although you can definitely go to Pittman on FanDuel if you want to go that direction, but I just don't feel super excited about any of the Colts options.
Yeah, it's fair. I think one of the things for large field, some of the stuff I play, I wouldn't go there personally. But again, Alec Pierce, if you just wanted to throw a dart in this game, makes a ton of sense. Now on FanDuel, it's like sickening to see him priced at the same spot as Michael Pittman. It's wild. But, on DraftKings 4,900, I think it's fine. Obviously, it's not going to project well. You need a long bomb to hit. But Detroit has faced the 4th highest deep throw percentage in the league, and that's what you're hoping for with Pierce anyway. So I don't hate that in large field, but outside of that, I'm kind of with you. Like, Downs is interesting just because you want to bet on talent. He's a good player. You could see a negative game script here. So that's kind of where I'm at. With JT, though, it's tough. You saw how it can go south real quick last week, where if Richardson's getting goal line carries, that's one thing you could take away from Jonathan Taylor. The other thing is he's not seeing as much usage in the pass game as he was with Flacco. So those two things hurt, and the Lions' run D remains dominant no matter what. I saw you put this stat in pace. They haven't allowed a running back to hit 100 yards since week 16 of 2022. So, I mean, if anybody can do it, it's JT, but the numbers say it's unlikely to happen.
Yeah, JT is a great large field play to gain leverage on Richardson. And if he's the guy that you want to play on that side, I mean, there are times where this could work. Like, I think Kenneth Walker had a 3-touchdown game against the Lions earlier this year. So don't just look at the Lions and be like, oh, you can't run on them. It's impossible. It's just more for large field stuff. What's crazy about the Lions is their defense was one that we just said, okay, you can pass on them forever. Don't run. It's a pass funnel. Did you know that they are number 1 in the NFL in EPA per pass attempt now?
I did know that, actually. I was doing some research for the show.
That's crazy to me for a team that, like, for the last 4 or 5 years, all we've done in DFS is just attack them. So props to them on drafting Brian Branch, people like that. And it's been really, really good. But any last thoughts on this game?
I mean, the more we talk through it, like, I do think there's just so many paths where and like I just take a step back and just not even think about like this game specifically, but just think about the sentiment around Anthony Richardson 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago was like, you got to start Flacco. Like, it's over. It's over for this year. And then he plays the Jets, and now everybody's like, okay, I'm back on Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying I'm not playing him in cash. I might. I'm not sure. But I do think this is a potential really good spot to fade the Colts if the market is going to be on it in tournaments. I'll just throw that out there.
All right, give me your Vegas take.
Oh, man. The 7.5 is tough.
I hate the 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the odds makers are pretty good at what they do. You know what? I'm not going to mess with it. I will take Lions to score at least 30 points.
I will take the Colts to go under their team implied total.
Ooh.
I think this is just a terrible matchup for them.
Okay, so Lions minus 7.5 it is.
Yeah, betting takes from Kyle. Just make sure you lock them in now.
I mean, Kyle, I'm waiting for your strongest stance here on these Vegas takes so I can run to my book and make a wager.
I was doing our pool for our company today, and I was like, why do I not feel really good about any of these? I like the favorites. Let me find a money line. I realized the last 2 times I took money lines on teams that weren't favorited.
You just love those plus odds.
The value. I just want to boost it. I just want to parlay everything. Next game, Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. This line has jumped back and forth. Right now it's Arizona -1. It's almost a pick 'em. The over-under is at 47.5, and we like this matchup because we think we get a lot of volume on the Seattle side. Geno's been up there in pass attempts. And Arizona, they're a weird team because you look at them and you go, they want to run the ball. That's like really what they want to do all the time, especially when they're up, especially in the first half. But then we have seen these big Kyler plays, these big Marv plays. So it projects to be a pretty good game based on this slate this week. So let's start with Arizona because I surprised myself by going into this game going like, Arizona's going to be a letdown. And I feel like there's a lot to like against the Seattle defense that's been terrible since week 4. So where do you want to start on the Arizona side?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned James Conner and cash just kind of like in passing, but this is such a good spot for James Conner just to kind of hammer it home. Since week 6, Seattle is 26th in EPA per rush. They're 30th in success rate in that time frame. And you add on the top of that Arizona is second in the NFL in red zone rush rate. So when they get in close, we know that the plan is we're going to hand the ball to James Conner. So touchdown equity is massive here. I actually like this spot a lot for the Cardinals coming out of the bye. You get a divisional matchup. I mean, this team has everything to play for, right? They're in first in the division. So I like this spot for James Conner, especially considering, like I said, the rush rate when they get in close. So I'm in on James Conner this week, even if he is chalky. When you play him in tournaments, that's fine. Just get a little different elsewhere. But I think there's a good spot for James Conner.
Yeah, if you were playing quarterbacks in a different game, then just go Conner and then pick somebody like Metcalf or JSN as just a simple correlation play from this game. But Conner is going to project really well. Kyler's cheap, man. At 6,200, it's a good spot for him. I mean, he's 4th in fantasy points per dropback versus zone. The Seahawks are allowing the most fantasy points per dropback using 2 eye safety looks. So I feel like Kyler's really set up for success on DraftKings. Trey McBride is going to be the easy click if you want to stack, and he's not too expensive either. Like, he's seeing a 25% target share. He's going to get a touchdown eventually in the receiving game. So I think I like Trey McBride, but I think I like Marv, and I wanted to get your thoughts on him because I don't know how people will play him, but we can say this. Marv is only $6,100.
Buttlicker, our prices have never been lower.
That's right. The lowest we're getting Marv all year.
This is the Bill Buttlicker special of the week.
It is the Buttlicker special because, and maybe there's a narrative bump here, this is a first-round rookie, a top 5 rookie, that is coming off the bye. And usually at the end of the season, this is when teams go, let's pepper our best player. Let's design all these plays. I mean, they're just stewing. Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator, I bet was just stewing over 2 weeks, just thinking, how can I get Marv the ball? But I really like this spot for him.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we have seen some historical data on that with players coming out of their bye week as rookies. You see a little bit of a bump there. So that makes sense to me if you want to go with that narrative. But I mean, as you talked about in pace of play, he's got the 5th highest air yard share of any wide receiver on the slate. And we know with Marv, you're not really ever relying on like specifically volume to get there. I mean, we would love that, obviously, but it is these big plays. And Seattle can hit big plays on the other side. So I do think this is a game that could go back and forth, and you could see the over here. So yeah, I think Marv is awesome. I mean, he's a guy that I feel like people are always hesitant to play for whatever reason. Maybe it's just, there was kind of bad vibes early in the year, and there was the GPS stuff and the speed and whatever. But it's like, man, his price
stuff can go in the garbage.
Yeah, his price, of course. His price is now the lowest it's been. Feels like a nice buy low spot on Marv here, especially if you think the Cardinals can win this game, which I think they can. So I like Marv quite a bit if you're stacking with Kyler. Also throw out, Trey McBride is awesome too. Like, I think if you're playing multiple lineups this week, I would play a Kyler and Marv stack. I would skinny it, and I would also play a Kyler and McBride stack, just because, like you said, eventually this dude is catching a touchdown. And last week they played the Niners without Kittle, so obviously they were good against the tight end in fantasy. But in weeks 1 through 9, before the bye week for Seattle, they were 25th in schedule adjusted points to tight end. So it's a very good matchup for Trey McBride as well. So I'm in on basically all the Cardinals here, which means what could go wrong?
The only issue I have with this game is that you will see some roster percentages from Connor and McBride. You will see it from Geno and the wide receivers on the Seattle side. So just, it's not going to get crazy out of hand, but it is, I like Marv because he's going to be around 5-6%. Like, people aren't going to be playing a ton of Marv here. I think on the Seattle side, it's a really easy, you double stack Geno because you're getting the volume, getting almost 40 pass attempts per game. JSN is kind of morphed into, he's not just a slot dude who runs these little routes. Like, the ADOT's increasing. So JSN's at 6,300, DK Metcalf 6,600. If you wanted to double stack those and then the other side play Marv to get away from a roster percentage, I'm fine with that. Or play James Conner. I like that. What are your thoughts on Kenneth Walker? The Bone Zone is at 6,900, and he's the most expensive player in this entire game, and I think he's going to be the most popular.
Yeah,
or Connor.
Him and Connor, for sure, are both kind of up there, pushing about 20%. Walker's been tough. I keep playing him because he's a guy that you just want to bet on the ability to hit explosive plays, contribute in the pass game. But that there's going to be a ton of duds in his outcomes as well. Arizona is 22nd in EPA per rush since week 6. So this is a favorable matchup. It's not the same walkover, pushover Cardinals defense of early in the year. They've actually played a lot better recently. Just wanted to point that out. So to me, I think he does make sense if you wanted to play him in tournaments. My lean, though, is that, like I said, my intuition here, I actually think the Cardinals can win this game. So I'm actually less on Walker than I was a week ago, personally. I love Metcalf this week. You talked about him as your slate breaker. It didn't work. Let's just go right back to the well. The underlying numbers there on Metcalf are awesome. So I just prefer to play it through Geno, through Metcalf, and maybe JSN, too, is my personal stance on the slate.
Yeah, I'll probably end up going in the same direction. There's just so many other running backs that I like on this slate, where I like Connor a little bit more than Walker. I can just go in other directions, but Metcalf is probably my favorite still in this game. Yeah, I mean, Geno. The problem with Geno is you need you need him to run. You saw that last week, right? They won the game on him running in that touchdown. Same thing with Kyler. Both of them, they can run. You get 30 yards, maybe you get one in the end zone. Then I feel like they can be difference makers. But you get a lot of these median outcomes where you're just like, okay, I got 17 points. I got 20 points. You're like, I need a ceiling in tournaments. So I think the volume is my favorite part of Geno, but Kyler obviously can run more. So give me your Vegas take.
Let's go Cardinals. I'm going to lay it's basically a pick 'em, but lay the 1 with Arizona.
Yeah, I think the line's right. And I'll just be taking Seattle money line.
Oh, Arizona is the lock of the week, everyone. Let's go.
Oh, man. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We've got a game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Old Brett Favre versus Steve Young. A little Jeff Garcia in there if you want to.
Well, that's a name. That's a throwback.
Yeah, he was a fun fantasy quarterback. He could run. The Packers are 2.5-point home favorites. The over-under is 47.5. These teams play slow. I think if this game was in 2020, we would have gone, sweet, let's go for it. We got Aaron Rodgers. They're going to go back and forth. There's all the weapons. And yet what they want to do is they want to run the ball, and we need really big plays. You saw that from the Packers last week. Jordan Love had a monster YPA. I think it was above 15. So it was one of those things where the Packers side has about 40 million options. And whenever we talk about the Packers this year, it's been, are you guessing the right one? Did you have Jaden Reed this week? Did you have the random Romeo Dobbs week? Did you have the 2-touchdown Kraft week? It's kind of just, you got to figure out the right combination. So that's why I've always kind of stayed away from stacking up Packers, because I feel like I'm always going to be one short. Josh Jacobs is a really good play on FanDuel. And I think he's probably going to go below the radar despite being a home favorite, and he's getting a ton of work. But on the Packers side, like, how are you attacking this game? Because they're the favorites, and even though the 49ers feel like a team that we're always buying into.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like almost like the Lions in some aspects, where it's like there's too many options to pick from, and so you always kind of just are like, I'm not sure, I just won't play it. Yeah, the Niners, my overall take on the game, like you said, these teams do play slow, but you're counting on explosive plays to be there. They have been there for the Packers. They've been a little bit hit or miss for the Niners recently. I think the Packers win this game. Just thinking about the Niners, I'm not that worried about Purdy, but dealing with a little bit of shoulder soreness. Kittle missed last week. Is CMC really 100% yet off the Achilles issues? Obviously, no Ayuk. The list kind of goes on and on. On defense, I don't think Nick Bosa plays in this game. They're down one of the starting safeties. They're down a starting corner. They're down another defensive tackle. Like, the defense is really banged up here, and you saw them have some issues last week in Seattle. So I think the Packers can win this game, which means I like Josh Jacobs, especially on DraftKings, like a contrarian play. 6,800, it's kind of a little bit too expensive for like the Kareem Hunt range, and Brian Robinson you talked about is going to be cash. Achan's right there in the similar price point. So I think Jacobs on DraftKings for tournaments is very interesting. I think he'll be pretty chalky on FanDuel, which is fine. I think it's a good spot for him, though. True bell cow roll. I mean, 20.7, sorry. 27 would be insane. 20.7 total opportunities and over 100 scrimmage yards per game since week 5. And, the Marshawn Lloyd thing is not happening, right? Like, it's literally just Josh Jacobs getting so much usage. If you think they win this game, which I do, I think Jacobs is a great play.
Yeah, this game comes down to picking the right game script for the Packers. They rank number 1 in neutral rush rate, number 3 in first half rush rate, but when they're trailing this year, they're number 6 in pass rate. So it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of have to figure out what is the game flow. And so Josh Jacobs makes a ton of sense. If you do want to play Jordan Love, I highlighted him on FanDuel, where I think he is way too cheap. I think this is a really good spot for Christian Watson. I understand he went off last week, and usually my MO is, people will chase that. You're going to see a lot more man-to-man looks, and it's one of those things where outside, that's kind of where they've been beaten this year. Although Jaden Reed kind of moves all over the formation. I don't blame anybody if you want to stack him up as well. But with Jordan Love, it's a double stack. You're just Love, and you're finding 2 other options on that other side. I wish I had it totally figured out. And I can't see us playing any Packers in cash, right? Like, FanDuel, like, if you wanted to play Christian Watson at 6,100, I get it for pricing, but you just can't have any confidence. So Packers are kind of out in cash, interesting in tournaments. On the other side, CMC is going to be popular. Juwan, who's the greatest thing that's ever happened, is going to be popular. Any other takes on the 49ers side?
I mentioned it briefly, just I don't know. I don't know what to think of Debo anymore. Like, you're just so used to him having these yak plays. You talked about this on the Dynasty show. We talked about him this week with Jason, if you want to check that out. But his efficiency is falling off in a couple years in a row. But at the same time, this is a guy that's seen 11 at 9 and 8 opportunities, because you got to include some of the rushing attempts. And it just hasn't worked out. And like, at some point, I think he's going to have a good game. I've been saying that for 3 weeks straight, and I keep playing him and losing money. But I think at some point, it'll swing back towards Debo. So if you think about just the game theory aspect of it, like you said, McCaffrey, mega chalk. Juwan, mega chalk. I don't know how healthy Kittle will be off the hamstring, but you can include him in this discussion as well. But Debo is just a GPP leverage option off of his teammates. Makes a ton of sense to me, especially if you think the Niners fall behind, but they are going to have to increase that pass rate.
What do we know about Purdy? I know that it popped up early in the week about back soreness, but
shoulder
soreness. I'm assuming he plays.
I think so. The line, you would think the line would move a ton if there was actually any any worry about this. So yeah, I think I'll be out there. Hard to say how severe it is. There's been like no reporting on the specifics of it, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it over the next couple of days.
Yeah, my thoughts on this game are I'm not trying to go overweight on it. I just feel like there's other options in other games that I like stacking up more. It's like I'm going to be playing Jennings in cash. I think Debo's a really good tournament play just because everyone's going to be on Jennings, so you get a lot of leverage there. You get leverage on CMC if you don't want to go there either. So I think Debo's my favorite from a game theory standpoint from this game. And then from there, it's like I'm just going to be doing some correlation plays.
Yeah, and if you did want to get into the wide receivers on Green Bay, I always love taking shots on Jaden Reed. I just think he's such a good football player. The routes have not been there, which is really frustrating. But I will point out, Romeo Doubs is 4,600, and we are like scraping the barrel at this point on DraftKings to get guys below 5K that you actually like are kind of excited to play. Romeo Doubs will pop up for a big game here and there throughout the season. So I think at 4,600 for tournaments, he's cheap. I think it's a good way to get access to this game if you want to.
You're right. That's when Romeo Doubs shows up.
Yeah, when you least expect it.
Yeah, I know what this guy is. So yeah, 4,600. Why not? If you want to put him in that stack with Jordan Love, especially on FanDuel, I'm fine with that. My Vegas take is I'm just going to take Packers at home.
Oh no, I was going to take the Packers, but now I feel like I can't. I feel like I have to fade you.
Let's double down.
Okay, you know what? Double down. We're going to the Packers.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more FanDuel play. So the FanDuel people out there, or if you're playing Sunday Night Showdown, we'll preview this game. It is the Philadelphia Eagles at the Los Angeles Rams. former team as well. Betz made us put this in here because the Eagles are favored by 2.5. They're looking really good in the NFC. The over-under is 49. And their defense, their defense looks so good. A lot of players, like if you watch college football over the last 4 or 5 years, you're like, sweet, I know the Eagles defense because they have every single player possible that's been really good in college. Imagine that. They were good in college on good teams. Now they are good in the NFL.
Shocking concept, isn't it?
Well, apparently there's a lot of teams that don't understand that, especially my team, the Falcons. All these players from the SEC, they're just like, let's not improve our defense at all. Anyway, how would you attack this game?
So it's really interesting, right? 49 points. It's a good total on this slate, on any slate, but on FanDuel. Tight spread, two high flying offenses that can put up points with. Talk about star power like Hurts, Saquon, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Kupp, Puka, Kyron. There's so many high ceiling plays in this game. My lean is this game hits the under. However, I don't know what you feel on that. You just mentioned, Philly's defense has been very good. Quietly, the Rams defense has been very good. They're top 6 in EPA per play over the last month and a half. And early in the year, they were just abysmal, right? You could just pick on the Rams every week. They have been very, very good recently. So I think the under is in play here, which is kind of interesting in terms of how you would potentially play it. I don't have a ton of interest in a full game stack, especially considering the prices. Hurts, 9,300. That's expensive. Saquon is 10K on FanDuel. He deserves it, but it's expensive. And then you kind of look at the other side of, Kupp, 9,200, Puka, 8,600. It's a lot of salary. So for me, this is more of a one-off or a correlation, or if you're behind on FanDuel in tournaments and you need a late swap pivot, keep this game kind of in your back pocket is how I'm thinking about it, just from a top level perspective.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it because the options are wildly expensive. But I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing Eagles because of that. AJ Brown is set up to just absolutely smash in this game.
I love him this week.
So I like them more as contrarian plays if you wanted to go, I think Kyron's going to be the play just for where he's at in his price that's going to get the most. I think Puka is still going to get squeezed out, even though I think he's fine in cash on FanDuel if you want to play him there. So at the end of the day, Stafford's still cheap enough that if you wanted to stack up that side and then play Brown as the bring back, I think that's a fine way to look at it and just play Stafford and Puka and you guess right on the Demarcus Robinson. Kupp is so expensive, man. 9,200 is a very high price tag to pay on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think I'll play Kupp this week. Just it's a price thing. And when you look at the splits, So this is when they've played together, and this does not include the game where Puka threw a punch and got ejected. So weeks 8 and then 10 and 11. Since he came back from injury, Puka's being targeted on 38% of his routes. He's dominating target share, dominating first read looks. Air yard share is way up. So I think Puka is the guy you're playing if you're going to fade the Eagles defense here and take a shot. So that's my personal stance. On the Eagles side, you mentioned A.J. Brown. I love him this week for tournaments. I don't think he's quite in the cash conversation just because the Eagles have been so run heavy. They're number one, or I should say 32nd, rather in pass rate over expectation. So they're the run heaviest team in football recently, but they haven't really been pushed by anybody, right? Like they got ahead against the Commanders. They played Deshaun Watson. They played the Jaguars, the Giants. Like they haven't really had to do anything. If the Rams can have success here, A.J. Brown and Hurts will be pushed. And when you look at this team, the Rams have faced the 10th lowest target share to slot wide receivers. That's where Devonta Smith plays. They have given up a ton to perimeter wide receivers where A.J. Brown plays the most. They're 29th in schedule adjusted points to wide receivers over the last 6 weeks. So it's been a while since it's seen like a vintage A.J. Brown game. Feels like a good spot for him.
Yeah, he's like a primetime guy.
For sure.
He's gonna show up and ball out. All right, what's your Vegas take?
I think the under is my official take. Yeah, the spread seems right. I'll take the under.
I will.
Rams money line. Say it. Say it.
I mean, if it's at 2.5, I'll take the Eagles.
Dang it. You just guaranteed the Rams win.
I know. All right, give me one more game. You mentioned earlier in the week that New England and Miami could be a sneaky game. Drake May, we're going to talk about him in a second. It's just one of my favorite players this week on a props level, you can stream him in redraft. So I think this game is sneaky.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a nice total, 46 points. It's not that far off San Francisco and Green Bay or the Seattle game. So I like it. New England games are 4-2 to the over since Drake May has been under center. And we've seen more play volume in general. Their games are 16th in combined plays. With Brissett, they were 29th. So we're at least seeing a lot more back and forth, upside here. And, the Dolphins, it's been a train wreck previously without Tua. They're getting back on track. When they're at home and they play bad defenses, usually they roll and put up points. I think they're going to put up points here, and that'll push Drake May on the other side. So I like May stacks because they're cheap, right? I mean, you talked about May himself is, 5,500 on DraftKings. Hunter Henry is 4K. Kayshon Boutte is 3,500. You could even play Pop Douglas, who's very cheap. So it's just a very affordable way to stack this game. And then you just know, okay, I bring it back with either Devon Achane or Tyreek Hill.
It's funny to think that Achane Jonnu's probably going to be maybe more popular than Tyreek.
That's crazy.
It's true though. Like people do not want to click the button for Tyreek Hill. And Jalen Waddle doesn't even exist in DFS anymore.
It is so wild, dude. Every week, their props are like the exact same, like the same yardage, the same receptions. It's like, how do we even get here? I don't even understand.
I'd rather have a Blu-ray player than Jalen Waddle right now.
I got one of those.
Okay, cool. All right, moving on.
Slate Breaker of the Week.
This week, we have a great sponsor. A beautiful sponsor for today's Slate Breaker. It is Herbal Essence's Sleepy Time Tea that Betz recently has fallen in love with. Betz and I, the other day, we were texting. It was probably at 8 o'clock at night. It wasn't that late.
Oh, come on. It was it was at least 8:45.
I'll check the text, man. I'm pretty sure it was at 8. And I was like, dude, I have my hot tea. I'm getting ready for bed. We're old now. And he goes, dude, I'm doing the exact same thing.
It's over. I mean, this is rock bottom. I bought a car with a third row with a Blu-ray player for the kids. I got my dad slippers on, drinking tea at 8 o'clock at night.
I'll say this. I had a great night of sleep. So
thanks to this tea.
You tell me who's winning. So anyway, I'm in this hot tea phase of my life. Slate Breaker of the Week. I am going with a man who is ready to ball out. My boy, Nico Ballins at 7.6. I've been calling him a lot of different things this year. Nico Ballins, big chunk. I had a time of the year where that meant a lot to me. But here's the deal with Nico. I want a ceiling outcome from whoever I am going all in on in tournaments. He's probably going to see the full amount of snaps and routes. We like that. L'Jarius Sneed will not be playing for the Titans. And since week 6, Tennessee ranks 24th in EPA per pass attempt. He went 7 for 80 against them last year. You're going to get a crazy ceiling outcome from Nico at a roster percentage that I think is going to be tame. It's going to be around 10%. So I want that on my team. I want a ceiling outcome. I might even be playing him in cash.
You could do it if you play Cutlets. Yeah, I love him. I think he's awesome. I actually told Kyle when I came into the dock to put in my slate breaker, I had planned to put in Nico Collins, which tells you, great minds think alike. I was very upset. So I'm with you. I love Nico this week. I'm going to go ultimate flop lag. You were on him last week. He was your slate breaker, and he was good. 9 targets, quote unquote, just 7 catches for 70 yards was DK Metcalf. Give him a touchdown there, and you're feeling way different about it. Give him an extra catch. You're feeling way different about it if he hits the 100-yard bonus. Good spot against the Cardinals. They're at home. We talked about the volume with Geno, and just when he's been in there, 44% air yard share, 23% target share, very strong numbers for an alpha wide receiver. Let's go Nico Collins and DK Metcalf this week for all the money.
I love it. We'll be playing these two together just for the love of the game.
Let's do it.
That's what it is. That's what it's all about, man.
It's time for Borg versus Betz, presented by DraftKings.
You don't have a sports book? No problem. You can play DraftKings Pick 6 with us. Last week, we were a combined 3-2. And let me be very clear, 3-2 because of the kicking prop. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are asking, hey, are you going to give a bonus kicking prop this week?
And the answer is?
Of course. Of course I am. We're doing pretty well on the year. And if you've been a part of DFS Past, you've definitely had a good season with us in the prop streets. I mentioned him earlier, but I'll be talking about it again. Drake May, I will be taking the more on his 26.5 rushing yards. He's over in 3 of his last 4. He's averaging 40 rushing yards per game in his full starts. And if you remember, in our props channel, we did take his rushing and passing together, but more than 26.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, awesome spot here for Drake May and the Patriots against the Dolphins. I like it. In that same game, I'm going to take Devon Achane more than 4.5 catches in the 2 starts. It has been 7, 7, 6, 8, 5, and finally it didn't hit. He had 4 last week. So good spot to go right back to him. He's had an 18.4% target share with Tua. That is second on the team behind only Tyreek Hill. Good spot here for Devon Achane.
All right, I'm going to be taking Rachaad White, or as he's known on the Footballers website, his official nickname is Richard Dick.
Did it actually get updated?
Yep, that's what it says.
Love it.
Rachaad White, less than 40.5 rushing yards. He's been under in each of his last 4 before the bye, which, if you think about it, Rachaad White's been really good for fantasy right before the bye. Like, he had his best games of the year over that stretch. He's averaging under 40% of the team rush attempts, and he's been over this line just twice the entire year. So, depending on the game script, if you think they fall behind, he's going to see way fewer rush attempts. But it's been one of those things where Bucky Irving's kind of taken over as the runner of the group, and he's been super inefficient this year. So, Rachaad White, less than 40.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, actually, on that same point, I think Bucky's interesting in tournaments this week as a contrarian play. Because like you said, it like the way you think about Bucky Irving, he's not a huge guy, so you don't think of him as like the early down back, but he's been their ball carrier when they're in a positive game script. So I like Bucky this week for DFS. One more prop. I'll take Jaden Daniels less than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Does not mean I think he is a bad play. I think he's a very good play. But when you look at other sports books, the odds lean to the under here, so it's like minus 125 or so. He's been under in 8 of 11 games this year. Washington, we talked about with Brian Robinson, very run heavy when they get in close. And Dallas has allowed the most rushing touchdowns in the league this year. So I think it's a Brian Robinson game, not as much Jaden Daniels through the air.
All right, it's time for that kicking prop. We'll see if Betz likes it enough to make it official. But it's Kaimi Fairbairn of the Houston Texans more on his kicking points. That 8.5, he's been over this in 4 of his last 5, and he's 8 of 11 on the season. And here's the key stat. Every opponent of the Titans who hit their team implied total this year went over this line. So it's a simple question for you, Betz. Do you think the Texans hit their team implied total this week?
I did talk about them on the Tuesday show, and I said I think they're going to go over their total. They're at home. We get really good kicking environment here in the Dome.
Great environment.
I think we got to make this an official.
Oh man, no, 8.5. Just for you guys know, that's a really high line for kicking points. Like 6.5, 7.5 is like where they usually are, but they should be really, really good. That was Borg versus Betz presented by DraftKings Pick 6. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code BALLERS.
Ballers.
That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Betz. Tell everyone to have a good weekend and to stay warm.
Yeah, stay warm out there. Get your dad slippers on, get a nice cup of tea, and watch some football this weekend. Should be a great slate. I'm very excited about it. A lot of different ways to build, but don't go crazy on your bankroll, everybody, because we have the slate of the year next Thursday for Thanksgiving. So we'll be back on Tuesday to preview that, and another show next week, Friday, preview the main slate. Have a great week. Good luck. We will see you next week.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.